1. The potential jackpot. Jin-Ho's squad had a total of 2 dungeons scheduled on this day, and there was quite a distance between them. Sangmin and Kitchell kept in frequent contact as each waited at a dungeon for the squad to arrive in order to confirm with their own eyes if their hunch was correct. It's still pretty chilly. Sangmin bought a cup of coffee from a nearby vending machine. He'd been waiting for Jin-Ho's team for an hour now, but his anticipation was somehow beating out his boredom. It had been a while since his heart had raced this fast. If I'm right, he's the first super rookie to come along in ages, and an S rank to boot. Sangmin had secured the title of department manager at a young age, and it was all thanks to his intuition. In fact, he had played a large role in raising White Tiger to its current status as a prominent guild. That same intuition was now telling him that Jin-Woo Sung might be able to take the White Tiger Guild to the next level. People will think I've gone insane if I say that, though. After all, according to his records, Jin-Woo was still officially an E-rank hunter. Things weren't always what they appeared to be, though, and Sangmin wouldn't have been who he was today if that wasn't true. He was watching the gate with the eyes of a hawk when... Ring. It was a call from Kitchell. Hey, Kitchell. Sir, Jin-Ho Yu's squad just arrived. Okay. Stay calm and keep an eye on them, then report back their every move. Yes, sir. Wait. Am managerin'. The voice on the other end of the line sounded odd. Did that idiot get caught? Sangmin started feeling anxious. What's wrong? Talk to me. You were right, sir. What? His heart beat faster. Only 2 people, Jin-Ho and Jin-Woo, are entering the gate. Of course, since this is all a test for Jin-Woo. As expected, Sungmin's hunch was spot on. His intuition had never failed him when it came to situations like this. Nice. He pumped his fist. While you guys take your sweet time, the White Tiger Guild can make a move. Jin-Woo Sung will be ours. Because that's how Sangmin and the second administration team rolled. While Sangmin was distracted by his daydreams of victory, Kitchell's voice continued spilling through the phone. So what should I do now, sir? Should I join you? No, keep monitoring them. Pardon? But we've already confirmed your suspicions. I'm curious about their clear time. I'd like to know how many hours it'll take them to clear a C-rank dungeon. Even A-rank hunters need more than a couple of hours if they go in by themselves, don't they? Do you have something better to do? Of course not, sir. I just thought you might get bored by yourself, so I thought I'd ask. That was why Sangmin liked Kitchell. He had a lightning-quick ability to adapt to situations. Don't worry about me and keep your eyes peeled for when they leave the dungeon. Understood. I'll have my phone with me at all times, so call me right away if something happens. Yes, sir. After Sangmin finished relaying his orders and hung up, he suddenly realized just how hungry he was. Rumble. Guess I was too focused on work. He'd been so preoccupied with waiting for Jin-Woo that he hadn't eaten all day, and it was already past lunchtime. He hadn't been able to leave his position because he'd had no idea when Jin-Ho's squad would arrive. Now that he could relax, he looked around for a place to eat before heading into a convenience store. It's not like I'm trying to save money, but... Even though there wasn't anyone around to judge him, he felt uncomfortable dining in a restaurant alone. After some deliberation, he decided on instant ramen from the store. He poured hot water into the ramen container and waited 3 minutes for everything to cook. He just snapped his wooden chopsticks apart when... Ring. Oh, 4. Who the hell's calling me when I'm trying to eat? A familiar name lit up his phone screen. Second in command, damn you, Kitchell. Sangmin took the call and snapped, You couldn't wait to call me again? I'm sorry, sir, but what? If you called me for nothing, you're eating instant ramen for lunch for a week. Sir, they've exited the gate. Sangmin, who at that moment had raised some noodles to his mouth, froze like a video on pause. What? Jin-Ho and Jin-Woo exited the dungeon, and the squad is now getting ready to leave. He hadn't misheard anything. He rushed to check the time. It's only been 30 minutes. Did they give up on the raid?
No, the gate is closing.
None of this made any sense.
Despite the different levels of difficulty among C-rank dungeons, it wasn't possible for a single person to clear a dungeon in 30 minutes.
Check again. Are you sure the gate is closing? Yes, I'm sure. Would you like me to send you a video? No, that's fine. Sangmin hung up the phone and stared blankly ahead. What would take an A-rank hunter 2 hours to clear, Jin-Woo had finished in 30 minutes. Never mind B-rank. Based on empirical data, he had to be higher than an A rank. Sangmin had hit the proverbial jackpot. Boss, do you have somewhere else to be? No, why? I've never seen you hunt so fast. Jin-Ho was absolutely awestruck.
He'd already known Jin-Woo was strong, but the Phenom Hunter had been on a completely different level today.
What Jin-Ho didn't know was that the results had been inevitable. Jin-Woo suppressed a laugh. It's because the magic beasts this time were werewolves. Title: Wolf Assassin, a title given to those skilled at hunting wolves.
When battling an animal-type monster, all abilities will increase by 40%.
With the enemies being werewolves, the Wolf Assassin buff had naturally kicked in. His high level plus the buff meant that mere C-rank magic beasts hadn't stood a chance. Yeek! Whimper! Waiyan!
At the rate Jin-Woo had torn through them, even 10 extra hands wouldn't have been enough to help Jin-Ho collect the essence stones from the beast's remains.
Jin-Ho ended up drinking 5 bottles of healing potion in this dungeon alone.
The concoctions were so filling that he groaned multiple times about how he wouldn't need to eat lunch.
That's that, but... Jin-Woo looked up.
He'd felt like someone was watching him for a while now.
I don't think it's a hunter, since I can't sense mana.
His eyes swept the surrounding area, but nothing caught his attention. If he wanted to, he could track down the interloper, but it would take a while due to the lack of animosity or hostility. It could have been nothing, and sure enough, the presence soon vanished.
What's wrong, boss? Nothing. Let's head out.
The clock was ticking, and there was no time to waste. Jin-Woo took one last quick look around and then got in the front passenger seat.
Jin-Woo didn't feel the gaze when entering or exiting the second dungeon. Am I being paranoid?
Either way, he was glad it wasn't a big deal. While he was lost in his thoughts, Jin-Ho approached and hung his head.
I'm sorry, boss.
The other gates are too far, so this is the last one for today.
That's fine, nothing to be sorry about.
There was still plenty of time before sunset, but they'd been on such a roll closing down the gates in this particular area that they had to call it quits for the day.
Good work, everyone. You did all the work, Chief. See you tomorrow. Good work.
Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho got in the van after seeing off the other members.
I'll take you home, boss. Jin-Ho had become his trusty chauffeur at some point. He looked completely at home behind the wheel, like this was what he was meant to do.
Jin-Woo gazed at him with pity. He has to play chauffeur even though he's a little rich boy, just because he wants to try his hand at being a guild master.
Jin-Ho caught Jin-Woo staring at him as he accelerated and chirped with a bright smile, Huh? Is there something on my face, boss? Nope.
Jin-Woo quickly turned his eyes ahead, as if he hadn't been caught.
Something occurred to him, and he pulled out his phone to check the time. It's 4:46. He had a while before he needed to be home, and luckily, he had something else to do. It was around here, wasn't it? If memory served. Jin-Woo turned to his driver. Hey, Jin-Ho? Yes, boss?
Jin-Ho replied as he skillfully turned the wheel and smoothly maneuvered the van around a corner.
Let's go to the Myri department store. Myri department store? Jin-Ho was puzzled by the odd request. Yeah. Sure, it's right over there, but is something wrong, boss? You've been acting odd all day. You know, you've gotten pretty chatty recently.
At those words, Jin-Ho whipped his head to the front and sat ramrod straight.
I'll get you there at the speed of light, boss. Hold on to your seat.
With his shift in attitude, Jin-Ho drove straight to the destination without braking once, and the pair soon arrived. Screech! The vehicle came to a stop in front of the Grand Myri department store, which was located in downtown Seoul.
TMP.
As Jin-Woo got out of the van, Jin-Ho also disembarked and walked over to the hunter, who stood there quietly. "Our guild has to have offices in a building like this, right, boss?" he asked half-jokingly, gazing up at the structure.
Alas, he received no answer. Feeling something was off, Jin-Ho urgently looked to his side. "Ha!" Jin-Woo was already gone. "Boss?" Search as he might, he couldn't find a trace of Jin-Woo in the area. "Boss?" As the boss has been defeated, the dungeon will now revert to its original state. Leveled up twice in the department store instance dungeon. Jin-Woo's footsteps were light on his way home.
That particular instance dungeon key had come from a mystery box a while back and could be used only at the Myri department store. He had been waiting for a good opportunity to go and had ended up clearing it today while he had some free time.
"Boss?" Jin-Ho's bewildered face while looking for him was hilarious no matter how many times Jin-Woo pictured it. At that moment, his phone rang. Ring. He checked the caller ID, but it wasn't a number he recognized. Who? When he was in high school, all his free time had been devoted to raising his baby sister, filling their sickly mother's shoes, and he'd started working as a hunter right after graduation. Meaning, his network of acquaintances was rather limited. "I don't usually get calls from unknown numbers." His hesitation was momentary, however, and he decided to answer the call. "Hello? Hello. Is this Jin-Woo Sung?" The man on the other end of the line had a clear voice. Jin-Woo hung up as soon as he heard it. Click. Based on past experience, 99% of the time, this kind of call is either a telemarketer or a loan shark. As he went to pocket his phone, it rang again. Ring. It was the same number. Ha! So it's not a telemarketer? Telemarketers had quotas to fill, so they rarely called back someone who hung up on them, as it was better to call as many numbers as possible. Besides, they also knew it'd be a waste of time to try again. That means this person actually needs to talk to me. Jin-Woo answered the phone properly this time. "Yes, this is Jin-Woo Sung." "Oh, excellent. I thought I dialed the wrong number, since the call cut off." Ha ha. Jin-Woo debated for 2 seconds if he should apologize and explain that he'd assumed the man was a telemarketer or a loan shark, but he stopped. Admitting that would be even ruder. After a brief silence, the man with a salesman's voice, continued. "Oh, right, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Sangmin with the White Tiger Guild." Jin-Woo stopped in his tracks. "The White Tiger Guild is calling me?" He racked his brain but couldn't think of a reason why they might reach out to him. The only connection he could remember was when they'd helped the association with the Double Dungeon incident, but it's a bit late to be asking me about that. Jin-Woo wasn't the type of person who could restrain his curiosity, so before Sangmin could say anything, Jin-Woo beat him to the punch. "May I ask why the White Tiger Guild is calling me? It's a little difficult to talk about this over the phone, so could we meet in person?" Instead of ordering him around, this man was willing to accommodate him, so Jin-Woo couldn't think of a valid reason to refuse. It also so happened that he would be available the day after tomorrow. Didn't Jin-Ho say he had to attend some kind of family thing? Jin-Ho had apologized for breaking their streak of daily raids, as his entire family was required to attend an important event. An important event. Maybe Jin-Woo watched too much TV, because he imagined it to be some rich family gathering in a fancy hotel banquet hall. In any case, it meant he was free that day. "I have time on Thursday." "I was wondering. Are you free right now?" "Right now." Jin-Woo checked the time. His phone read 8 p.m. "It's almost 8 o'clock, I'm close by. I just need a moment of your time." "Close by?" "I'm in a cafe nearby." Sangmin told him the name of the cafe, which sounded very familiar. Not only did he often pass it by because it was across the street from his apartment building,
but it was also where Jin-Ho had first made his proposal.
Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. They know my address. Hunters' addresses weren't readily available on the association website.
The only details made public were their names and ranks. Hunters could choose to add their personal information, but Jin-Woo hadn't included a single way to contact him in his profile. Despite this, not only did they know his number, but they were also waiting near his home. That meant they had done their research.
Now that I think about it, things were starting to add up. Today I kept feeling like someone was watching me, so I'm assuming that was also one of your people?
Jin-Woo's voice deepened.
At his accusation, the man readily offered a polite apology. Sorry if we made you uncomfortable.
We simply wished to verify the truth.
We wouldn't have bothered contacting you if we wanted to cause trouble. I guarantee you'll appreciate what I have to say. Jin-Woo considered a bit before answering. I'll be there soon. Hunters, Reapers, Knights, Fame, and us, White Tiger.
I'm sure you've at least heard of them. Sangmin listed off the top 5 guilds in South Korea. Among them, the Hunters Guild was number 1, but it hadn't always been the top guild. Originally, that title had belonged to the Reapers Guild, but when the White Tiger Guild broke off from the Reapers, they'd lost their standing. After that, the student had surpassed the teacher. The fact that White Tiger had not only gained independence but also surpassed the Reapers was old news these days. And now, the White Tiger Guild was gunning for the number 1 spot that had once been held by the Reapers. Sangmin was fully convinced that Jin-Woo Sung, the man sitting across from him, would be a great help in their quest to reclaim their former glory.
Sangmin handed Jin-Woo his business card.
Sangmin, White Tiger Guild's 2nd Administration Team Manager. I'm Sangmin, the manager of the 2nd Administration Team under the White Tiger Guild, one of the top 5 guilds in the nation. I'm in charge of recruiting and managing new hunters. Any other hunter would have given him a proper 90-degree bow and struck up a conversation even before receiving his business card. Unless they were an S or a rank, joining the White Tiger Guild was every hunter's dream.
Truthfully, Sangmin expected the same reaction from Jin-Woo, but he was different from all the others. He didn't miss a beat and calmly asked, "Why is someone from the White Tiger Guild looking me up?" Sangmin was shocked. To think he wasn't intimidated even after hearing the name White Tiger. They'd exchanged only a few words so far, but Sangmin had a feeling that recruiting Jin-Woo wouldn't be easy. On the other hand, he still very much wanted to secure this up-and-coming hunter. After all, there was nothing wrong with an ambitious new talent. If you think about it, he has to have at least some ambition to be of any use. Sangmin strengthened his resolve. I'll be straight with you. We would like to recruit you, Hunter Sung. We are prepared to double whatever Eugene Construction has promised you. He offered Jin-Woo a pleasant smile. It looked like Eugene Construction was still testing out Jin-Woo's capabilities. How stupid. The speed with which he could clear a C-rank dungeon, the marketing potential of a reawakened hunter, the ease with which he was handling himself in this situation, and so on, there was no reason to test him any longer. Since they don't know how valuable he is, they probably haven't offered him the right price. Sangmin was confident White Tiger could double whatever Eugene Construction had put on the table or more. But Jin-Woo's gaze turned icy. How did you know? WH what? Jin-Woo's unexpected response caused Sangmin to falter, even with all his experience as a seasoned recruiter. How did you know to find me? It occurred to Sangmin that if words had a weight, these would have crushed him. What is this overwhelming pressure? The man in front of him seemed to regard him as an enemy. After all, Sangmin had both tailed him and contacted him out of the blue for a meeting. It was understandable that Jin-Woo might consider him hostile. Sangmin rushed to explain. We didn't spy on you on purpose. We happened to receive word that someone was rapidly clearing C-rank dungeons in our area, and your name came up when we looked into the matter. Jin-Woo reined in his glare. I see. Contrary to what Jin-Woo feared, it didn't seem like this man had investigated him because he'd discovered Jin-Woo's secret. Jin-Woo had appeared on his radar because of the speed with which he'd been clearing dungeons. It doesn't look like he's malicious. Jin-Woo's expression relaxed slightly, and the tension between the two dissipated a bit. Phew. Sangmin was relieved, but the conversation hadn't made any progress.
He needed to find a way to make a favorable impression.
Nothing better than sharing information for getting on someone's good side. Sangmin was a master of recruitment.
He gathered himself and reassumed his professional smile. It's supposed to be confidential information, but we're already aware that Chairman Myung-hanyu is looking to form a new guild.
Jin-Woo neither confirmed nor denied this. Sangmin continued.
I knew as soon as I saw you together with his youngest son, Jin-ho.
We figured they were trying to recruit you, a reawakened hunter, for their guild. As Jin-Woo suspected, Sangmin thought he was a reawakened hunter. Nice to know that that's what they think.
It meant that Jin-Woo didn't have to make up a story. Sangmin quickly added, we were hoping to talk to you before you signed a contract with Eugene, so we contacted you like this in a rush. I apologize again if we overstepped any boundaries.
It's okay.
It would have been a different story if there were any ill intentions, but given the sincerity of the apology, Jin-Woo decided there was no need to make a big fuss.
More importantly, he needed to figure out how to handle this. Sangmin interrupted his train of thought. Have you already signed a contract with Eugene Construction?
Jin-Woo's hesitation seemed to have given him that impression.
When Jin-Woo shook his head, Sangmin's slightly anxious expression immediately brightened. Great. He's a free agent, then?
Here was an opportunity to recruit a highly skilled hunter who could clear a C-rank dungeon all by himself in 30 minutes. Technically, he had gone in with another D-ranker, but to someone B rank or higher, he was probably more like deadweight.
What if Jin-Woo joins the White Tiger Guild and gets re-evaluated as an A rank or better? Sangmin was having a hard time suppressing his giddiness. Jin-Woo scratched his chin. Seems like he's counting his chickens before they've hatched. Thinking about it, White Tiger wasn't so bad. It was one of the top 5 guilds and had potential to become number 1. But Jin-Woo had no intention of joining a guild now. My net worth will increase as my level goes up. Plus, it might be a while until he could do this, or maybe never, but
what if, one day, I can clear B and A rank dungeons by myself the way I clear C rank dungeons now? The earnings from high rank dungeons were beyond imagination. They were the reason large guilds were able to grow into entities rivaling megacorporations. Highly valuable essence stones, remnants of magic beasts, minerals excavated from dungeons, rune stones, artifacts. Untold sums of money flowed from those dungeons. If he could obtain and keep all that wealth for himself, why share it with a guild? If I keep leveling up, it's definitely not impossible. That was why joining up seemed a bit premature. The corners of Jin-Woo's mouth started to lift. Sangmin beamed, thinking this was a positive response. Have you come to a decision? You promised me double, yes? That's right. If you believe what they offered doesn't reflect your talents, we could possibly raise your compensation. Then how much is the White Tiger Guild's building worth? Sangmin's expression froze for a second. Is he doubting our financial liquidity? No, this wasn't the time to be indignant. Here was a chance to flex for the guild. There was no need to withhold the information and not tell him.
This was an opportunity. Sangmin proudly answered, the appraised value is about 50 billion won. White Tiger doesn't use the entire building, but the guild does own it.
Initially, White Tiger had been renting out office space, but they eventually bought the property after establishing themselves. It took only a year to do so. It was a prime example of how much money a large guild made. Had Jin-Woo asked, Sangmin was ready to tell him the guild's gross and net profits, but Jin-Woo's casual response rendered him speechless.
Can you give me the building? Excuse me? Sangmin's eyes widened. Positive that he'd misheard, Sangmin asked, what did you say?
Jin-Woo patiently explained. Eugene has promised me a 30 billion won building, you see. If White Tiger's building is only 50 billion won, that's less than double, but considering the substantial value, I'd be willing to overlook it.
Did you say 30 billion won? Sangmin's mouth was agape.
Jin-Woo had 4 years of experience, but that career was as an E-rank hunter.
He'd become noteworthy only in recent weeks.
That meant it was likely that his second awakening hadn't been much earlier.
How powerful was he now for Chairman Yu, a man well known for his business acumen, to promise him 30 billion won even before his re-evaluation? Wait, is he bluffing because there's no way I can verify this offer? Sangmin gazed at Jin-Woo suspiciously.
As he did, Jin-Woo took out his phone and quickly dialed someone as if having read Songmin's mind.
Ring. Click. Yes, boss?
It was late, and the cafe was quiet, but Jin-Woo purposefully turned the volume on his phone all the way up.
Let me ask you something, Jin-Ho.
Of course.
Ask me anything, boss. Jin-Ho? Jin-Ho Yu? Sangmin swallowed nervously. Is he going to tell Jin-Ho about our discussion?
His assumptions were misguided, though, and Jin-Woo brought up something unexpected.
The building you said you would give me, what's it worth again?
Its market value is about 30 billion won, but it'll jump once construction is completed and our guild moves in, boss.
Oh, right. If you need a notarized document, I can fax it to you now. Hold on.
Jin-Woo covered the receiver with his hand so Jin-Ho couldn't hear and asked Sangmin, if you're having a hard time believing this, would you like to talk to him yourself?
Sweating profusely, Sangmin shook his head. No, that's okay. I gotta go.
You got it, boss.
Songmin's eyes were wild, a complete reversal from before the phone call. Eugene Construction promised him 30 billion won as a signing bonus even before forming the guild? And the son addresses him with absolute respect? Sangmin was stunned. The thing is, negotiating large sums of money like that is above my pay grade, so to speak.
But if you give me some time, I can discuss this with upper manage. Jin-Woo cut him off.
Then I believe we're done here. Songmin's head drooped, and he was at a loss for words.
He analyzed the source of his failure.
Ultimately, I lacked information.
He had been unsuccessful because he had rushed things.
He'd made rash, risky moves because he couldn't contain his excitement at such a huge catch.
If only he had done more research on Eugene Construction's proposal and proceeded as usual with support from the guild. I need to first report this to the guildmaster. If Chairman Yu valued Jin-Woo at 30 billion won, then he could well be worth 50 billion or maybe even 100 billion.
It might not be too late.
With the guild's help, I should be able to dig up more information about him and push harder. Jin-Woo interrupted his thoughts.
Let me just ask you one thing.
Sangmin raised his head and realized that Jin-Woo's cordial demeanor had vanished. Despite the fact that it was a warm spring night, the air around them suddenly turned chilly.
Gulp. As Sangmin swallowed nervously, Jin-Woo lowered his voice. How many people know about me?
Oh.
Only me for now.
I was rushing to try and recruit you as soon as possible, so I didn't have time to report to upper management. In truth, there was one other person who was aware, Kitchell, Songmin's subordinate and right-hand man. Sangmin figured that this might upset Jin-Woo, so decided to keep Kitchell a secret, just in case. But Jin-Woo growled, let's not lie to each other out of mutual respect, agreed?
Sangmin was taken aback. What? Did he look into us before our meeting? If that was the case, lying would just make their relationship unnecessarily worse than it already was. Sangmin didn't even want to consider that possibility.
I guess I have no choice but to tell him the truth. The relationship between a hunter and a guild was similar to that of a celebrity and an agent. Even if a hunter wasn't willing to enter into a contract at this point in time, it was important to maintain a good relationship, because one never knew what the future may hold. Avoid conflict with hunters as much as possible.
That was the golden rule of the second administration team. To that end, Sangmin decided to confess. To be perfectly honest, one of my subordinates does know about you. That is the truth. Jin-Woo nodded. I knew it. It was just as he'd suspected.
Research, surveillance, and reaching out to Jin-Woo. This was too much work for one person. The decisive clue was the timing of when Sangmin had contacted him. His call had come as soon as Jin-Woo entered the vicinity of his house.
Someone was probably watching me and informed him the minute they saw me. After all, Sangmin would have wanted to talk to Jin-Woo as soon as possible while making sure Jinho remained clueless. At least this wasn't official White Tiger Guild business. That much was clear from Sungmin's reaction to the 50 billion won. He'd panicked when presented with a figure higher than he had authority to clear. If he was going through the proper channels, he would have at least feigned a call to upper management, regardless of whether the amount was possible or not. Taking all that into account, Jin-Woo had suspected a small team of 2 or 3 people, and Sangmin had now personally confirmed it to be 2. Thank goodness. Jin-Woo didn't want things to get complicated, but 2 people? He could easily keep the situation under control. It was obvious they would keep pestering him if he left things as is, so he decided that a small warning was in order. Jin-Woo spoke up. I'll be honest as well. I've already rejected Yujin's offer. Sangmin was floored by this bombshell. What? In that instant, Jin-Woo vanished from sight. Ha! Sangmin sprang to his feet. He quickly spun around but couldn't spot Jin-Woo anywhere. What's going on? Did he move so fast that I couldn't see him? Caught off guard, Sangmin belatedly realized that a hand had settled on his shoulder. NGH, a chill ran down his spine. Don't turn around. The voice came from his side. Jin-Woo had been sitting across from Sangmin one moment and had silently slipped behind him the next. Stealth. Sangmin broke into a cold sweat. Is he mad at me? Hunters were monsters. Sangmin knew this well from working so closely with them. That was why he always treated them with the utmost respect. Was the surveillance entailing the tipping point? I should have requested backup from the guild before I came. But it's not like I could have arranged security when I don't know his rank. Songmin's mind was spinning, and his heart was pounding. The sound of his own breath was deafening. Jin-Woo murmured, "Please sit down, nice and slowly." I'd hate to give you a heart attack. Sangmin hesitantly nodded. I think it's too late for that. He did as requested, and Jin-Woo reappeared, sliding into the seat next to him. Although Sangmin understood why Jin-Woo would say those words. Earlier, the look in Jin-Woo's eyes as he asked his single question had made his blood run cold. If Sangmin had met that same gaze directly in this kind of situation, his heart might have stopped altogether. Is this his way of being considerate? Still, there was no arguing the fact that Jin-Woo was a scary man. Jin-Woo continued. The reason I rejected Yujin's offer is because I'm not interested in joining a guild at this time. Both men kept their eyes straight ahead instead of facing each other as they conversed. ISC. Also, Jin-Woo paused for a beat. I would rather not have anyone else knowing about me. It was a simple request. He didn't want to join a guild, and he wanted to keep a low profile. Sangmin understood immediately. But there was still one thing he was curious about. If I may ask, then why are you working with Jinho? He's helping me with a personal matter. No one else knew about my reawakening, and I think of him as a trustworthy friend, so I asked for his help. Speaking of, the weight of Jinwoo's words seemed to grow heavier. If I find there's talk about me behind my back, may I assume that you or your subordinate will take full responsibility, managerin? Even though Jin-Woo had already removed his hand, the threat exerted an even heavier pressure on Sangmin's shoulder. This isn't a bluff. Sangmin couldn't explain how he knew this, but he was utterly certain that Jin-Woo could do plenty of damage if he wanted to. My gut feelings about people are almost always right. Jin-Woo had escaped several horrific life and death situations. How did the saying go? What happens in a dungeon stays in a dungeon. Who knows what Jin-Woo had gotten up to in there? And he has the stealth skill to boot. The stealth skill could be a major pain. Skill holders could commit virtually any crime and get away scot-free, if they were careful enough. Security cameras, guards, and alarm systems were all useless. A bead of sweat rolled down Sangmin's forehead. I had no idea he could use stealth. Outstanding abilities and a rare skill. No wonder Eugene had offered him 30 billion. Not like they'd make a deal unless they knew they'd profit from it. Ba dump, ba dump. Even though he was frightened, Sung Min's heart was beating with excitement. He managed to get out a reply. Rest assured, I will keep your secret. I'll make sure Kitchell, my subordinate, is also on the same page. Keeping all this on the down low was preferable to Sang Min anyway. A free agent of his aptitude? There was no reason to spread information and risk competitors finding out about Jin-Woo, and it wouldn't hurt to be able to take all the credit for discovering him. Truth be told, I have to admit that the biggest reason is because I don't want him as an enemy. I'll take your word for it, managerin. With that, Jin-Woo's presence disappeared from the seat next to him. Sang Min peered at his surroundings. The cafe around him had a peaceful, cozy vibe, and Sang Min felt like he'd been abruptly dropped into another world. Ha! He was rendered speechless and could only press a hand against his racing heart to try and calm down. Just then, Kitchell burst into the cafe. He had been watching Sang Min and Jin-Woo through the window and had dashed to the scene as soon as Jin-Woo vanished. Managerin. Sang Min looked deathly pale, so Kitchell worriedly asked, Sir, what happened? Did negotiations fall through? Sang Min's trembling hands fished out a cigarette and brought it to his lips. Kitchell. I think this is an even bigger deal than we thought. They had to recruit this man no matter what. His mind was consumed by that single thought. Fortunately, it looked like the opportunity was still there. He was brought back to earth when Kitchell lightly grabbed his wrist. Sir, Sang Min looked at the younger man just as he was about to light up. Kitchell glanced around and then whispered cautiously, this is a non-smoking area. Sang Min crushed the cigarette in his fist. Seriously. As soon as Jin-Woo got home, he called up his stat window. Ping. Name, Jin-Woo Sung, job, none, HP, 7229, fatigue, 0, level, 39, title, Wolf Assassin, MP, 638, stats, strength, stamina, agility, intelligence, perception, available ability points, 0, physical damage reduced by 20%, skills, passive skill, unknown, LV max, willpower LV.1, advanced dagger wielding LV.1 active skill, dash LV.2, murderous intent LV.1, fatal strike LV.1, item equipped, warden's collar. No wonder people are starting to notice. He jumped an incredible 12 levels, from level 27 to 39. This was the first time he'd had such an exponential increase since the first instance dungeon, when he'd gone in as level 1 and emerged as level 17. He'd also been low level back then, but it was different now. It was a testament to just how many dungeons he'd cleared in a short span of time. I've only been doing raids with Jinho for 4 days, and I've already cleared 9 dungeons. On top of that, all 9 were C rank, which were considered the highest level dungeons an individual could clear on their own. The speed at which they were moving was insane, to the point where it was troubling hunters in the area who depended on those very same dungeons to make a living. Jinho, who had a front row seat to this spectacle, could only watch dumbfounded at the dizzying pace Jin-Woo was maintaining. After all, it was only natural that the higher his level became, the faster he could get it done. 12 level ups within 9 dungeons meant he was averaging about 1 level per raid. There were 10 dungeons left, and at that rate, he'd easily surpass level 45 by the time he fulfilled his commitment of 19 raids. When his level was in the mid-20s, he'd been able to defeat a B-rank hunter. He couldn't even hazard a guess as to how powerful he was currently. My heart is racing. Jin-Woo put his hand on his chest and felt his pulse. Ba dump, ba dump. Getting stronger was an absolute thrill that he could have never imagined in the past. To think that entering gates and capturing dungeons could be this exciting. It's because I can actually check how much stronger I become. Every time his level increased and his abilities evolved, he could see the difference after each excursion with his own eyes. Hunting. Jin-Woo felt like he was a real hunter now. It felt right to describe what he was doing as hunting. There was a saying among animal hunters that locating the next hunting grounds was just as important as the hunt itself. And Jinwoo's next destination was already set. The Demon's Castle. He'd been level 21 or so when he first stepped foot in the Demon's Castle dungeon, and he'd gained almost 20 levels since.
He thought it likely that he was more than ready to tackle it now, but remembering Cerberus, the monstrous gatekeeper, gave him pause.
What if I open the castle doors and a horde of creatures ends up overpowering me?
He shuddered at the thought. It might be possible to successfully escape using the stealth skill, but he couldn't be certain. A hunter could be lucky 10 times over, but a single mistake could lead to death.
That was why Jin-Woo refused to take any chances.
He needed to be absolutely sure he had the power to defeat a group of creatures at Cerberus's level at once. Cerberus's name was in red. The color of the monster's name indicated its level of difficulty. The only time he'd ever encountered a monster with a red name had been at the demon's castle. Most of the monsters found in instance dungeons accessed by keys from mystery boxes were low-level, including the ones from today's Myri department store instance dungeon.
But for some reason. Am I missing something?
Jin-Woo assumed that the only monster he'd seen with a red name was the one encountered at the demon's castle, but something niggled at the back of his mind.
He was definitely forgetting something. Was there a red-named monster other than the one in the demon's castle? But that wasn't possible.
He'd almost died when he'd fought Cerberus at level 21, so if he'd met a monster labeled in red earlier, he would have he blurted out. Of course. He'd had one other close call with such a monster.
The penalty quest.
The centipedes in the desert had also had names floating in red. Poison-toothed giant desert centipede, that had been a forced encounter from a while ago, back when he hadn't made the connection between the new creatures and the term monsters, so it took a moment for him to remember them.
If I'm able to defeat those centipedes easily, he'd have enough confidence to raid the demon's castle.
There had been more than one centipede, so he'd also be able to test whether he could handle a coordinated attack from a group of such high-level monsters.
The question was, how to reach them. Is skipping the daily quest the only way to get back there?
Whether he completed the penalty quest or the daily quest, the amount of ability points he would receive would be the same, which meant he had nothing to lose.
I'll go to the penalty zone tomorrow. When he thought about the fact that he would be skipping the daily quest on purpose in order to do the penalty quest,
it was amusing, considering he'd barely survived the last time.
I wonder if they'll drop any items or experience points.
His lips started to curl up at the thought, but his musings were interrupted as his perception suddenly alerted him to a presence stepping out of the elevator at the end of the hall. The light footsteps were familiar to him.
Jaina's back. It was 11 p.m., the time his sister usually returned.
Jin-Woo got up before she could even start rummaging through her pocket for the key.
Click. Oh! Jaina exclaimed playfully.
When he'd first started opening the door, she would get startled, but she'd gotten used to it.
If there's one thing humans are good at, it's adapting. I'm home. Welcome back.
Jaina greeted her brother and wandered off to her room. Jin-Woo turned to lock the door after her when.
Hey, Jin-Woo? Jaina cracked her door open and stuck out her head. Do you have any days off this week?
What for? My homeroom teacher said she needs to have a parent-teacher meeting, but it's fine if you can't make it. She looked anxious, as if this was a special request from her teacher.
A parent-teacher meeting.
Since Jaina was a senior, her teacher would also be busy making sure her students had plans for their futures. Jin-Woo would have preferred to avoid the meeting, citing his busy schedule as an excuse, but unfortunately, he had a day off.
Thanks for nothing, Jin-Ho.
After some deliberation, he replied, Thursday.
Really? Awesome. Jaina's expression lit up instantly.
Jin-Woo sensed she was seconds away from tackling him in a hug, so he quickly waved her off.
Tisk, she rolled her eyes at him before retreating back into her room. A sigh spilled out of Jin-Woo.
Non-stop raids, revisiting the penalty zone, and now a parent-teacher meeting the day after tomorrow.
It was shaping up to be a busy week.
Jin-Woo left home early, since he had a full schedule today.
Jin-Ho had booked 4 gates.
It seemed like he was making up for the fact that they were off tomorrow.
Well, considering how fast I've been clearing them. 4 or 5 dungeons a day shouldn't be a problem.
The bigger issue was that it was uncommon for multiple C-rank gates to appear in close proximity, but today was their lucky day. Jin-Woo arrived at the apartment entrance with a spring in his step. However, in place of Jin-Ho's van in its usual parking spot, he detected a suspicious presence. Tisk, he would have let it go were it not for yesterday's events.
I thought I made things clear.
Jin-Woo easily located a man in a suit lurking nearby. He was looking at his watch, so he didn't notice Jin-Woo approaching until the hunter stepped into his space and spoke up.
Excuse me. The man jumped. Hunter Sung. It was like he'd seen a ghost. I guess this is the reaction I was hoping for when showing off stealth. Jin-Woo tooted quietly. Are you from the White Tiger Guild? Sorry? Oh, yes, I'm Kichul Hyun of the 2nd Administration Team of the White Tiger Guild. This must have been the subordinate that manager had mentioned last night. Pleased to meet you, sir. Kichul peeked at Jin-Woo as he extended his hand. He obviously wanted to shake, but Jin-Woo wasn't in the mood to indulge him. After a brief silence, Kichul turned red and withdrew his hand. I believe I made it very clear that I am not interested in joining a guild. Kichul hastily waved. Oh, that's not why I'm here.
He then offered Jin-Woo the travel mug in his other hand.
What's this?
Jin-Woo peered at the multicolored liquid in the semi-translucent bottle curiously.
Kichul puffed out his chest. It's a green smoothie. I made it myself, so I can vouch for the quality.
As Kichul continued to offering it to him, Jin-Woo felt obligated to accept the juice.
So you've been waiting here since the crack of dawn just to give me this?
Yes, of course.
It's for your health.
Jin-Woo briefly wondered why the White Tiger Guild was invested in his health.
Kichul bowed with a bright smile as he left. I'll be seeing you, sir. He waved goodbye, and Jin-Woo waved the bottle at him in response. What an interesting guy.
As soon as Kichul was out of sight, Jin-Woo examined the contents of the travel mug. He'd heard tales of top insurance salesmen winning over customers by bringing them bottled drinks, but this was the first time he'd heard of anyone bribing someone with a homemade green smoothie.
In any case, I can't just throw it out.
Not that Kichul would, but even if the smoothie was poisoned, it wouldn't be a problem, since Jin-Woo had the detoxing buff. He figured he may as well give it a taste.
Slurp.
Jin-Woo's eyes lit up as he tried a sip.
Not bad.
Just then, he heard a familiar voice behind him.
Boss.
He turned around as Jin-Ho approached.
The always sunny-faced Jin-Ho gestured in the direction Kichul had left. Boss, who was that?
The guy who was just here.
Jin-Woo merely answered, insurance salesman. Aha.
The ever-optimistic Jin-Ho accepted this answer without a second thought.
Jin-Woo looked around.
Where's your car? If Jin-Ho had spotted Kichul, it meant he'd also arrived earlier, but his questionable van was nowhere in sight.
I parked it over there, boss. How come? You know the murders with no discernible pattern recently committed in the area? People have been eyeing me suspiciously, since I don't live here. Jin-Woo bobbed his head.
The murders had been all over the news lately. The victims were mostly young women, and there had been 2 incidents this month already. And then, to see an unfamiliar black van loitering at the entrance of the apartment building, no wonder residents were suspicious. Slurp, slurp. Just then, Jin-Woo finished off the smoothie. He shook the bottle to get it any last drops before heading off to where the van was parked. Let's roll. Yes, sir. This particular dungeon was crawling with lizardmen. Lizardmen, as the name implied, were a cross between lizards and humans. They were bipedal, could wield weapons, and some could even use magic. Lizardman mages were rare, but they could be a handful. One such mage conjured up a fireball in each hand. Magic? When Jin-Woo attempted to get closer, the 2 lizardmen guarding the mage thrust their spears at him. They had quick, reptilian reflexes, and Jin-Woo was forced to jump back, narrowly avoiding impalement. Seconds later, fireballs came hurtling toward him. Fwung. Fwung. Look out, boss. Jin-Ho shouted from where he was watching the fight at a safe distance. Kaboom! Explosions shook the narrow cave, and thick smoke filled the area.
Cough, cough.
Jin-Ho coughed hard as he covered his nose with the back of his hand, but he was more concerned about Jin-Woo than himself.
The attacks from lizard-man mages were quite destructive. His fears proved unwarranted, though, as Jin-Woo emerged from the smoke unscathed.
Jin-Ho was starry-eyed.
Amazing.
Despite lizardmen being some of the toughest opponents one could encounter in a C-rank dungeon, Jin-Woo had faced a mage's attack head-on without a scratch. He also seemed to be getting faster every day.
I'm probably imagining that, right?
Jin-Woo spat out the soot that had fallen into his mouth.
2.
What landed on the ground was black.
These bastards.
Jin-Woo was not happy about having to breathe in the ash from some lizardman's flashy magic trick, and his scowl put his displeasure on clear display. Skill, murderous intent has been activated. Daggers shot out from his furious gaze.
Debuff, panic has been activated.
All the opponent's abilities will decrease by 50% for 1 minute. The lizardmen exposed to murderous intent became agitated.
Skreek? Skrock? Jin-Woo didn't miss a beat and threw Kasaka's venom thong with all his might.
The dagger flew straight and lodged itself between a guard's eyes.
SHHHNK.
It was too fast for a lizardman with reduced speed to dodge.
Scraw. The other guard wailed as it witnessed its comrade's death. When it lunged at Jin-Woo with its spear, though, it missed. Jin-Woo had suddenly disappeared. Scrawkaw. The mage was worked up. Scrawkaw.
As the mage repeated its cry, the guard turned to it and began screeching.
Skreek.
The guard bared its teeth as it approached the mage, which refused to back down.
Skrock. Right then. Cack. A hole burst open in the guard's chest. The startled mage, now covered in blood, scurried back. Scree? Whoosh. As stealth deactivated, a spear appeared in the guard's chest, and the one holding the shaft was Jin-Woo.
He let go, and the impaled lizardman fell lifeless to the ground.
Whump. As it did, Jin-Woo retrieved Kasaka's venom thong from the other guard's forehead. Scree-eek.
Red flames flared in the mage's hands, but Jin-Woo didn't give it a chance it needed.
Dash. In an instant, the distance between Jin-Woo and the mage shrank, and the mage's eyes widened. Its reptilian orbs looked slimier up close. Whoosh. Jin-Woo evaded the flames shooting from the mage's hands, slipped behind it, and stabbed the dagger at its spine. Fatal strike. SHHHK. The mage shrieked. Scree.
Jin-Woo's second stab to the back resulted in a feebler scream.
SHHHK. Gack. The mage coughed up blood as it toppled forward. Whump.
Jin-Woo mentally pumped his fist in victory.
That was a nice, clean fight. Yes. The system chimed as if to celebrate his win. Ping. You have leveled up.
The player has reached the required level.
A strange message followed the usual one. The required level?
He had no idea what that could mean, but when the chime rang again, his heart started beating so fast that it almost hurt, and he had to make an effort to calm it.
Ping. A job change quest has arrived. Would you like to accept the job change quest? Y/N, a job change quest.
Jin-Woo was so focused on leveling up and increasing his stats that he'd forgotten about one line in his stat window. Name, Jin-Woo Sung, level, 40, job, none. The third slot of the stat window indicated his job.
Changing my job means. He had an opportunity to change it from nothing to something. He would have a job.
In most video games, characters benefited greatly from changing their job, so it stood to reason that it would function similarly within this system.
Ba-dump, B-A-dump.
His heartbeats were deafening.
After realizing he was one step closer to his ultimate goal, he just couldn't calm down. Would you like to accept the job change quest?
Y/N, the choices kept flashing before his eyes.
Of course I. What kind of idiot would waste an opportunity like this?
Jin-Woo was more than happy to accept the job change quest.
Except, something stopped him. Hang on.
There was no way to tell what kind of quest he'd get. Both his instincts and his rationality were now sounding alarms.
I'm inside a dungeon.
Dungeons were the most dangerous places in the world. Even if he now had plenty of experience with C-rank dungeons, a dungeon was still a dungeon. There was no need to intentionally court danger.
Besides, Jin-Ho was here, too.
It wasn't that Jin-Woo didn't trust him, but there wasn't any reason to reveal the system to him or attempt to explain whatever strange phenomenon might occur when he changed jobs.
Things might get too complicated.
Besides, depending on the quest, Jin-Ho might be in danger.
What if a monster appeared out of thin air? That would actually be preferable.
Monsters, he could defeat, but it could be a more extreme quest.
The two urgent quests came to mind. It could tell me to get rid of the nearest hunter.
And that was just one example, though this was only a theory for now.
Jin-Ho appeared in that instant.
Boss. It looked like one of the fireballs had landed near him as he was covered in soot.
How did you disappear and reappear during the fight? Did you always have that skill?
Jin-Ho's face was flushed, and his eyes were sparkling with excitement.
He seemed fascinated by the stealth skill. I think his current state is much more fascinating, though. Jin-Woo took a handkerchief out of his inventory instead of answering.
It had been a daily quest reward from the day before yesterday.
Be boss?
He rubbed Jin-Ho's face with it.
Ag. Gah. The once white fabric was now black. Jin-Ho took the handkerchief Jin-Woo passed over and realized his state.
Embarrassed, he quietly wiped himself clean.
Jin-Ho. Yes, boss? I just remembered that I have something I need to do. Jin-Ho spun around. Does that mean you have to leave? Once I'm done here, yeah. Understood. Then I'll cancel the reservations for the other gates. Jin-Ho didn't want to show it in front of Jin-Woo, but he found the cancellations regrettable. I'm running pretty low on cash.
He was funding this entire operation with his own savings, and he had no other paid work. He was limited in how much he could borrow because he was keeping everything a secret from his father.
Association policy stated that he couldn't get refunds for canceling. It was basically flushing money down the toilet, so how could he not feel bad?
To make matters worse, Jin-Ho was spending a lot more than he'd planned due to their unique method of clearing gates.
That was more money gone.
His shoulders slumped helplessly.
However, Jin-Woo nonchalantly responded, "Why cancel and waste money?" Jin-Ho blinked. "Ha?
But if you don't enter a gate within 2 days after booking, the permit gets revoked anyway, boss."
Jin-Woo was fully aware of this. "Leave it to me." Did Jin-Woo already have a solution?
Jin-Ho had no idea but felt he could count on him. Meanwhile, at the White Tiger Guild headquarters.
Manager in. Do you have a single thought in your head?
A big, booming voice erupted from the offices of the second administration team. The voice belonged to Yunho Baek, the guildmaster and CEO of the White Tiger Guild. It was never a good thing when the big boss himself descended from the top floor to read someone the riot act.
Why are there no gates reserved to train our new recruits? Do you realize we're already 3 days behind schedule?
All the other employees kept their heads down, worried they'd be next on the firing line. Manager kept his eyes on the floor as President Beck shouted and gestured wildly.
Sangmin was experienced enough to know not to actually reply and further rile his boss, the way his subordinate Kitchell did.
It was best to keep his mouth shut in situations like this.
It didn't matter what he thought.
President Beck shook the report he'd received that morning from the second administration team.
You call this an excuse? You couldn't book any gates because you were outbid by another group? Does the guild not have enough money? What, are they funded by some little rich kid?
It was tempting to answer that question, but Sangmin steeled himself and kept quiet.
He had promised Jin-Woo, after all. If I say anything now, I'll have to out those two. Oblivious to Sangmin's internal conflict, the president continued shaking the building with his bellows.
I don't care if it costs 1 or 200 million won, do whatever it takes and book a damn gate.
Understood? As if on cue, Song Min's phone rang. Ah. I'm really sorry that I missed your call.
Was with a friend, so I was shy. Sang Min sneaked a peek at the caller ID, and his eyes widened.
Sorry, sir, I'll just be a minute.
The main job of the second administration team was recruitment, and much of it came down to good timing. Sang-min was the manager, and although Beck was still seething, it would be foolish to keep Sang-min from answering his calls.
Well, take it. Beck acquiesced.
The manager excused himself with a quick nod and promptly answered the phone. Hello, Sang-min of the White Tiger Guild speaking. Beck crossed his arms and waited for the conversation to end.
Yes. Yes, understood. If you wait for us at the cafe on the first floor, we'll be right there. Great, we'll see you then. Sang-min hung up and rapidly said, Sir, I have to head out for a while. This was Sang-min, the ace of the second administration team. If this was a matter where he was willing to sprint out in the middle of a tense situation after a single phone call. Beck's face softened slightly. Is this related to a new recruit? Yes, sir. Judging by the confidence on Song Min's face, Beck surmised that something important was at hand. Manager is personally heading out to scout this new recruit? That meant this candidate had to be exceptional. Beck's scrunched expression suddenly smoothed into a delighted smile. Far be it from me to stand in the way of our recruitment expert. Don't worry about things here and get going. Sang-min bowed again and quickly ordered, Assistant Manager Hyun, bring the contract and seal. Yes, sir. The two were out in a flash. Once they'd left, Beck surreptitiously interrogated a male staffer. So what's the deal? What has manager in being so proactive?
The male employee shot an imploring look at the female coworker beside him to come to his rescue, but she shook her head. Her eyes made it clear she didn't know either.
Shoot.
He hesitantly replied, The thing is, sir, I'm not quite sure. He expected the president to lose it right then and there, but surprisingly, he remained quiet.
He's up to something, and he's even hiding it from his subordinates?
Beck rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Managerin was often credited with single-handedly building up White Tiger to what it was today, and here he was, hanging off this potential recruit's every word.
Is he about to make another big score? A smile bloomed on President Beck's face. Why is this coffee so bitter? Jin-Woo frowned.
He'd ordered espresso thinking it would be similar to instant coffee, but it tasted more like bitter herbal medicine, not to mention the price was exorbitant for something that tasted so awful.
6,001 could have bought me a few canned coffees, too. He was trying to figure out how many sugars he had to pour in to make it taste more like canned coffee when. Ting-a-ling. The cafe door opened, and Sang-min and Kitchell entered. Over here. Jin-Woo waved his hand. Sung-min's and Kitchell's faces lit up as soon as they spotted Jin-Woo, like two kids who'd spotted Santa Claus.
I didn't expect to see you again so soon, Sang-min offered in greeting as he sat down across from Jin-Woo, with Kitchell taking the seat next to his manager. He exchanged nods with Jin-Woo. Sang-min wanted to strike while the iron was hot, so he reached for the contract as soon as he was seated. First, let's discuss terms. It was clear he was extremely eager to get Jin-Woo to sign with them, but Jin-Woo instantly rejected him. I'm not here about the contract. Sung-min's hand stopped in midair. Kitchell also looked dumbfounded. The manager haltingly asked, So then, what brings you to the White Tiger Guild? His disappointment was as great as his expectations. The super rookie had walked in on his own 2 feet but refused to sign as soon as he saw the contract. Had he changed his mind in that short span of time? As Sang-min tried to make sense of it, Jin-Woo answered him mildly. I'm here because I want to help you. Excuse me? Pardon? Sang-min and Kitchell shared the same reaction. As they exchanged surprised glances, Jin-Woo continued calmly. You said you were having a rough time training new recruits because our squad was sweeping up all the C-rank gates. That's correct. We can't exactly take new recruits to higher rank dungeons because we're having trouble reserving C-rank ones. And that's why I'm here. Sang-min cocked his head. Sorry, but I'm not sure I follow. Jin-Woo decided to stop beating around the bush.
We wish to sell you 3 permits we have for C-rank dungeons. Ah. Kitchell let out a noise. The 2 White Tiger employees finally grasped Jin-Woo's intentions. As he put away the contract, Sangmin pointed out, if you really want to help us, then wouldn't it be more efficient to stop booking C-rank dungeons?
Jin-Woo shook his head.
We have our own reasons for needing them. Then what about today?
Jin-Woo smiled pleasantly. I wanted to help you out with your dilemma, of course. Could they trust those words? Before Sangmin could begin calculating everything in his head, Jin-Woo continued.
This offer only stands for today.
We're also in a position where we can't postpone our raids. Miss this chance, and you won't get another for a while. It was like he was on a home shopping show, promoting a product just about to sell out.
Sangmin was torn. Seoul wasn't the only city with gates.
If they had to, they could take their recruits to train elsewhere. The problem with that was they could set off sparks with established guilds or strike squads in the area. What's more, doing so could give whatever large guilds overlooking those regions, like the famed guild in Honam or the Knights Guild in Yeongnam, a reason to look down on them. The White Tiger Guild could develop a reputation as incompetents unable to train their rookies on their home turf.
We wouldn't be able to deny it, either.
Because that was the cold, hard truth.
And if other prominent guilds considered them a laughingstock, what self-respecting newbie would want to work for them? Public perception was everything for a guild. Okay. Sangmin came to a conclusion after much deliberation. Please sell us the permits. 3 is perfect for our needs. How much would you like for them?
The White Tiger Guild had plenty of money, but there was no point trying to compete financially with Eugene Construction.
Besides, Sangmin also wanted to maintain a good relationship with Jin-Woo. Shouldn't he be grateful Jin-Woo was willing to give him the gates? He was less grateful for the price. 300 million won for one, so 900 million for all 3. GCK. Sangmin and Kitchell almost choked.
That's too much. Kitchell tried to interrupt, but Sangmin quickly stopped him. Something similar had happened the last time they met. When they couldn't agree on the price, Jin-Woo had cut off the conversation without a second thought.
This situation had come full circle, in a way.
If he passed this up, he'd have no choice but to book a C-rank gate later or, worse, train the new recruits in a different city.
I should at least try to negotiate.
It would be a shame to fold so quickly. No matter how one looked at it, 300 million won per gate was practically extortion. These days, Jinho's squad paid an average of 100 million for a permit. Asking for 3 times that was reaching, and both parties were aware of that fact. He started high, knowing we'd negotiate the price.
Sangmin recalled what the president had said in the office.
I don't care if it costs 1 or 200 million won, do whatever it takes and book a damn gate. That was tantamount to getting the president's approval right there, and he wouldn't be able to deny it as everyone in the second administration team had heard those exact words.
Sangmin took a breath and made his counteroffer.
300 million won is too much even for us, so how about 200 million would deal? Jin-Woo stuck out his hand before Sangmin could finish his sentence. In his confusion, Sangmin instinctively took it.
That's it?
Yes,
200 million won per gate. Please wire the money to our account.
It all happened in a blink, but Sangmin was relieved it had gone as smoothly as it did. He lightly shook Jin-Woo's hand.
Thank you very much. Glad to be of help. Jin-Woo beamed. Sangmin could now afford to relax a little.
Not only had he resolved the training problem, but he'd gotten a little bit closer to Jin-Woo. Deals are based on trust, after all. Indeed, he would build up his relationship with Jin-Woo step by step, and Jin-Woo would be on his side in no time. He shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Sangmin cheered mentally. Jin-Woo was the first to stand.
I suppose I'll see you around. Oh, and here. He handed Kitchell a paper bag with the travel mug inside. Thank you for the smoothie. It was really good. I'm glad it was to your taste.
Kitchell blushed as he accepted the bag.
With that, Jin-Woo left the cafe. As soon as he was far enough from Sang-min and Kitchell, Jin-Woo gave Jin-Ho a call.
After a few rings, Jin-Ho's excited voice picked up.
"Boss. 600 million won actually came through." Jin-Woo wore a satisfied grin. It had been a successful transaction. He was able to sell the permits for double the price they'd paid instead of letting them go to waste. It was a huge win.
Jin-Ho was incredulous.
"Boss, how'd you do it? Who did you sell those C-rank gates to?" "That's a trade secret." "Huh? Rest up. I'll see you in 2 days."
Leaving Jin-Ho baffled, Jin-Woo swiftly hung up.
Click. Later that night, at the office of the second administration team, Kitchell urgently approached Sang-min. "Sir. Sir." "What?" Sang-min took his eyes off his computer monitor. Kitchell urgently pointed at his phone. "Please take a look." "What is it?" Sang-min's eyes narrowed as he focused on the screen. "This is..." It was the Hunters Association official website, accessible only by hunters. Specifically, Kitchell was on the page that listed gate locations and showed permit auction prices in real time. "What the? Why are there so many unclaimed C-rank gates in our area?
And they're all going for less than 10 million.
That means," Sang-min's mind raced. "Jin-Ho's squad didn't book a single gate today." He then remembered what Jin-Woo had said. "I have time on Thursday." Tomorrow was Thursday.
Jin-Ho's squad hadn't been planning to go on a raid from the start.
Sang-min had unwittingly overpaid for the permits. Sang-min had to laugh.
The clue had been there all along, but he'd come to the realization too late. That was his mistake, but at least it had helped calm down the president. "We've been duped, managerin."
At that moment, Sang-min received a text. Ding! It was from Jin-Woo.
"With this, we're even. I'll forget the fact that you spied on me."
He's a tricky one, isn't he? Sang-min swallowed his laugh.
If this made them even, as Jin-Woo said, it was a win for the White Tiger Guild, since the ultimate goal was to recruit Jin-Woo.
And to them, it wasn't that much money anyway. Let's think of this as an investment in Jin-Woo.
The hope was to see a return on that investment. With a twinkle in his eye, Sang-min closed the message.
After sending the text, Jin-Woo scanned his surroundings. Not a soul nearby. He was currently in the woods, as he'd chosen an infrequently visited hillside for safety's sake. It was currently 5:44 p.m., so he didn't expect any hikers at this hour. Plus, he'd picked a spot off the beaten path. Shall I get going? Jin-Woo accessed his inbox. Would you like to accept the job change quest?
Y/N, the message popped up like it had been waiting for him.
Gulp. Jin-Woo swallowed nervously.
It was nerve-wracking not knowing what kind of quest he would get, but more than that, he felt excited. When Jin-Woo had been searching for a suitable place to accept the quest using his phone, he'd also looked up information about changing jobs.
New skills. Progress rewards. Job-exclusive weapons. Job-related quests. And so on.
This was all information from video games, but the general consensus was that changing jobs had tons of benefits.
And for me, level 40 was when I could do it.
Of course, it wasn't all good news.
Jin-Woo also came across some more ominous posts online. What do you do if you chose the wrong job? Shit, if I'd known, I would have picked a different class.
I made the wrong decision, so I'm now giving up my favorite game and going back to my boring reality.
Do I have to delete my character?
Well, that was to be expected when looking through video game forums. Jin-Woo didn't think he had too much to worry about, since he fought almost exclusively using a dagger anyway and all his skills were reminiscent of an assassin type. Like dagger-related skills or stealth. Plus, he'd heavily invested his ability points into strength and agility, so he couldn't imagine getting any job other than an assassin class.
With that on his mind, he summoned Kasaka's Venom Fong. Whom
The hilt of the dagger fit perfectly in his hand.
This feels right to me. He gave a resolute nod.
With the weapon gripped tightly, Jin-Woo looked at the message floating in midair.
Okay then.
Jin-Woo readied himself to face the unexpected and submitted his answer.
Would you like to accept the job change quest?
Y/N, accept. As soon as he did, more messages popped up.
Ping.
You have accepted the job change quest.
The dungeon for the job change quest will now be generated. The dungeon will be generated?
Before he could begin to analyze what that meant, things started changing before his very eyes.
VMMM.
A large, dark hole appearing at his feet was just the beginning.
VMMM, VMMM.
The hole started out the size of a bean, then grew to the size of a coin, then a volleyball, until it was finally big enough for a person to step in and out of.
Is that?
Jin-Woo stared in wonder. He'd expected to receive another message containing the details of the quest when he accepted, but this. What appeared directly in front of him was nothing short of a gate.
It made an actual gate. This was no different from others he'd seen, if a little on the small side. The system sent a message as if prodding him. Please enter the dungeon through the gate. Okay, take it easy. Jin-Woo calmed himself down. Right.
If he thought about it, it made no difference whether he entered a dungeon with a key or through a gate. He was just surprised to witness the creation of an artificial gate. He'd only ever entered ones that already existed, he'd never seen any birthed.
That was when a new question popped into his head. Wait. Can other hunters also enter this?
There was no way he could test it.
There weren't any other hunters nearby, and he didn't have anyone who would come running at his call, right?
Jin-Ho came to mind for a second, but he quickly dismissed that thought.
If something went wrong, I wouldn't be able to handle the consequences. The message flashed again as if impatient. Ping. Please enter the dungeon through the gate.
The chime snapped him out of his thoughts. He slapped his cheeks with both hands to get his head back in the game.
Can't get distracted now.
If he succeeded in this quest, he would be able to change his job and reap the benefits. He had no idea what would happen if he failed. It was time to focus.
Phew.
Jin-Woo let out a deep breath, held Kasaka's venom fang in a reverse grip, and leaped down the gate.
You have entered the dungeon. Ha!
Jin-Woo went in expecting the worst, but to his surprise, there was nothing there. It was an average cave-like dungeon.
It's just the same.
He'd heard that some higher-level dungeons were portals to the other world, so he'd been apprehensive. Thankfully, his worry was unfounded. Instead, he received a peculiar message.
Ping.
In this area, potions and access to the store are forbidden, and you will not recover your stats when leveling up.
Jin-Woo confirmed there were no magic beasts in the vicinity and put away his dagger. Looks like this won't be easy.
Perhaps because the quest was for a job change, there were tons of restrictions. Not being able to recover his stats using potions or level-ups was alarming.
That means damage is going to add up. If he got wounded, it could all be over.
Since he couldn't heal, he would have to exercise extreme caution. I can't afford to lose focus. Jin-Woo closed the inbox and, as usual, tested the exit.
You cannot exit until the job change process is complete.
The message came up as soon as he touched the gate. He pushed with all his might, but it wouldn't budge.
Jin-Woo withdrew his hand. It's blocked. A dungeon of unknown rank, no stat recovery, and no exit. This was a high-risk dungeon. Even the bravest hunter would tread lightly here. But high risk isn't the end of the world. He had learned through experience that the higher the risk, the higher the reward. If the restrictions were any indication, didn't that mean there would be an incredible prize at the end of the tunnel? There was only one way to find out.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Jin-Woo took a step forward. He looked ahead and could see only an endless cavern. He couldn't sense any magic beasts nearby. Should I refer to them as monsters, since I'm in a system-generated dungeon?
Though the fact that they were creatures was the same. Besides that, there was one more difference: torches lined the cave wall.
Torches instead of glowstones, huh?
Unfortunately, torches weren't the best light sources, so despite the sheer number of them, it still wasn't enough to illuminate the whole place, leaving shadows creeping here and there.
Who?
The mixture of shades and stillness made this dungeon more dismal than others.
I can see fine, but the problem was the atmosphere of the place.
Jin-Woo pulled out the nearest torch and held it in front of him. The path seemed to brighten.
Much better.
Jin-Woo smiled with satisfaction. He gave a quick glance behind him before extending the torch to light the way ahead and moving farther in.
How long had he been walking?
After quite a while, he came across a turn in the road and sensed multiple presences around the corner.
Finally. Jin-Woo carefully put down the torch and stood upright. Whom?
A dagger replaced the torch in his right hand. He briefly entertained the idea of using the stealth skill to get this over with quickly, but dismissed the thought after remembering how much mana it ate up. He wasn't allowed to use potions to replenish his mana here, and he didn't want to waste it, leaving himself vulnerable at a crucial moment.
It's coming. Jin-Woo pressed his back against the wall and waited for the enemy to turn the corner. Clunk, clunk.
The creature's footsteps made an almost metallic sound that drew closer.
Clunk, clunk.
Jin-Woo furrowed his brow at the unfamiliar noise.
Does it have a weapon made of chains?
He was curious but curbed his impatience. He'd find out soon enough.
5, 4, 3.
He reversed his grip on his dagger and held his breath to avoid alerting his enemy with his breathing.
2, 1. Clunk, clunk. The monster's shadow was finally visible. 0.
At the end of his countdown, the creature appeared in view.
Jin-Woo aimed for its neck. Clang. The sound of metal on metal rang, and the dagger didn't penetrate. Armor?
Jin-Woo's eyes bulged, and he took a step back as he processed what he'd attacked.
A human? It was a knight sporting full-body armor, face hidden behind a helmet.
Jin-Woo called out just in case.
Hey! The knight didn't respond but rushed straight at Jin-Woo.
Thud, thud, thud. The knight charged, shoulder extended, but Jin-Woo easily avoided the attack by twisting out of the way.
Unable to curb its momentum, the knight came to a halt a ways behind Jin-Woo. Maybe it's not human?
After being so close to the knight, Jin-Woo was certain he couldn't sense a heartbeat as would have been the case with a normal person.
The knight didn't seem human.
It was a type of magic beast, no, a monster he'd never seen before.
It was covered in armor from head to toe.
But it really feels like...
Jin-Woo couldn't shake the feeling he was fighting a person. Shing!
The knight turned and drew its sword. It seemed to share Jin-Woo's intention of killing its opponent. Sensing the mutual hostility, Jin-Woo sharpened his gaze.
Dash! Your speed has increased by 40%. He who strikes first wins.
Jin-Woo moved in before the monster could.
Whoosh!
Jin-Woo avoided the knight's hasty swing and took multiple stabs at the armor.
Clang, clang. But he didn't inflict any damage. The armor's too thick.
Not only was it thick, but the surface was smooth, making Jin-Woo's dagger merely glance off. The knight swung its sword horizontally.
Whoosh! Jin-Woo ducked and narrowly avoided getting struck in the head. Since the knight swung so wide, there was a big gap in its attack, a perfect opening.
Jin-Woo got closer and focused all his power into this attack.
Fatal strike. Shunk!
The tip of the dagger pierced the knight's armor.
Did it work?
But it was as if nothing had happened, and the knight slammed its blade down at full power.
Shwoom!
Jin-Woo threw himself out of the way.
Clang!
The sword struck the ground, casting sparks. Jin-Woo moved back and found his footing again. His dagger was still stuck in the creature's side.
Tisk, he clicked his tongue. It's not that high level. That was his objective evaluation. The knight moved slowly because of its armor, and its attack patterns were simple.
The only thing it had going for it was that its defense against bladed weapons was off the charts.
Jin-Woo rolled up his sleeves. Impenetrable skin? Been there, done that.
His confidence came from a previous encounter. The boss monster blue venom-fanged Kasaka had broken a mana-powered steel sword with a single headbutt, but Jin-Woo had managed to defeat the gigantic snake.
Compared to the Kasaka, this knight is, well.
The reassuring thought brought a tiny smile to his face.
Thud, thud, thud.
The knight trusted its armor and charged at Jin-Woo again.
See? It's a simple creature.
The hunter easily dodged the knight's shoulder and moved behind it to put it in a headlock.
KRRRK.
Of course, the creature's armor also protected its neck and kept it from being suffocated.
KRRRRK. Jin-Woo's muscles bulged, and his veins popped out as he squeezed with all his might. His aim wasn't to strangle the knight.
He gritted his teeth hard and put all his strength into it.
As he did. Crack! The knight's helmet popped off with a terrible noise.
Jin-Woo was finally putting his over 100 strength stat to good use.
Got it!
With its head separated from its body, the knight dropped to its knees, lifeless.
Thud! You have defeated a knight.
A short and sweet message appeared to signal the end of the fight. Something sparkled on the knight's armor to indicate the presence of loot, but Jin-Woo's attention was elsewhere.
What? There's nothing inside? The helmet in his hand was empty.
Just in case, he checked inside the armor, but that was empty as well.
So I fought a moving suit of armor?
As he reached that conclusion, two more knights rounded the corner. They were rather late to the fight.
Clunk, clunk.
The knights, or rather, the suits of armor, drew their swords in unison upon discovering Jin-Woo.
Shing! Shing!
Jin-Woo tossed the helmet aside and warmed up his neck and shoulders. He already knew how to deal with these adversaries. This is where it starts. Thud, 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 thud.
Jin-Woo smirked at the charging knights.
The first stage of this dungeon would be a piece of cake. Perhaps it was because of all the restrictions, but the rate of item drops was quite high. Jin-Woo had defeated only 3 knights, but 2 had each dropped an item, which made the current rate 66.6%. He'd never seen such a high drop rate anywhere else. Instance dungeons usually yielded a few miscellaneous items or things to sell in the shop.
You have discovered item, high-rank knight's chestplate. Would you like to acquire it?
Of course I would. The equipment vanished off the headless knight that remained kneeling and materialized by Jin-Woo's feet.
Clunk.
The information screen for the chestplate appeared. Item, high-rank knight's chestplate, acquisition difficulty, B category, protective gear physical damage reduction, plus 7%, if strength is under 80, movement speed will decrease.
An additional physical damage reduction by 7%.
Combined with his current stats, he could decrease any physical damage he took by 27%.
If I can get it to 100%, does that mean I'd be impervious?
He considered the possibilities for a moment until it sank in that a B-rank item gave a 7% reduction. It wasn't like the percentage for an A-rank item would suddenly go to 30 or 40%.
Taking that into account, reaching 100% seemed to be a lost cause.
Still, every little bit helps. If he kept at it, the continuous stat buffs could become an extremely powerful tool. He'd already had Jin-Ho demonstrate the usefulness of quality items.
How do I use this thing?
He picked up the chestplate, and as expected, he received a message about equipping the armor.
Would you like to put on item, high-rank knight's chestplate?
The chestplate was a heavy piece of metal that would have been awkward to wear in daily life. If he hadn't tried on the warden's collar before, he would have spent a considerable amount of time deliberating before resigning himself, but that wasn't the case.
Yes. Ping. You have put on item, high-rank knight's chestplate.
The equipment vanished from his hands, and Jin-Woo called up the stat window to check the result. Physical damage reduced by 27%, it worked. He placed a hand on his chest but couldn't feel the heavy piece of armor. He tried moving around but still couldn't feel a difference. It was exactly like when he had put on the warden's collar.
Great.
Next, Jin-Woo turned his gaze to the knight he'd left crumpled in a corner. It was so badly damaged that it didn't look like it had anything salvageable, but a telltale glow indicated it held an item. You have discovered item, leather pouch.
Would you like to acquire it?
Jin-Woo felt a little guilty for the destruction he'd wrought on the knight. He wasn't used to fighting barehanded and had trouble controlling his own strength. With a solemn expression, Jin-Woo approached the knight and extended his hand.
Acquire. You have opened item, leather pouch.
It contains 30,000 gold. You have acquired 30,000 gold.
Ha!
He'd expected the pouch to appear in his hands, but he'd instead received the gold directly.
Was this item somehow different from the usual ones?
He checked his inventory and was amazed to see that 30,000 gold had been added to his balance.
Balance, 863,400 gold, I got a whopping 30,000 gold. Maybe it was because knights usually carried around more items?
He recalled how, in video games, the player would often acquire more by defeating human-like monsters over other creatures.
Thinking about it, it made sense that one would get more items from a human being than an animal or an insect. It was possible this rule of thumb was being reflected in this situation as well. In any case, this was welcome news. He was saving up gold to buy items from the shop, so a find like this was a big help. Is there anything else I can take? People often say that there's no end to humanity's greed.
Jin-Woo set aside his main reason for being here and inspected the knights with avarice shining in his eyes. All the suits of armor were worthless, as he'd crushed them in battle, but the swords caught his eye.
I can work with those. The swords looked shiny and brand new.
Since they weren't daggers, he had no plans to use them himself, but he figured he could sell them in the shop. If that was a no-go, he could always make a pretty penny selling them to hunters. Jin-Woo picked up a sword, but as soon as he did, it quickly rusted over and crumbled through his fingers.
Oh, it happened in the blink of an eye. Is this because it's not an item I'm allowed to take?
That was too bad, but there was nothing he could do about it. Jin-Woo dusted off his hands and picked up the torch he'd put down earlier. He turned the corner where the knights had been lurking and saw that the path continued on with no end in sight. He still had a long way to go. It was like reviewing his notes for a test. It was a funny comparison, but that was what popped into Jin-Woo's head. In the past 2 hours, he'd run into 4 different kinds of monsters within the dungeon: knights, mages, assassins, and archers.
Using stealth this time? An assassin suddenly dropped from his radar.
Jin-Woo didn't panic but instead increased his perception, and he soon picked up on the presence of someone sneaking up behind him.
Clang!
He blocked the assassin's dagger with Kasaka's venom fong, sending his assailant stumbling and leaving an opening for a quick counterattack. Venom fong hit the assassin's chest dead center.
Shunk! You have defeated an assassin. You have leveled up.
The fatally wounded assassin silently disintegrated into a puff of black smoke.
Thump! Its leather clothes fell to the ground. Why are all these monsters humanoid? Every time he killed one, it felt like...
Jin-Woo shook his head.
Thankfully, he couldn't see their faces. The knights wore helmets, assassins and archers wore leather headgear, and mages wore hooded robes.
Jin-Woo was about to continue along the road when suddenly...
Flash!
There was a burst of light right in front of his eyes. A mage that had been casting under its breath from a hiding spot had completed its spell.
Kaboom! Then came an ear-splitting explosion.
Alas, by that time, Jin-Woo had already made his way behind the mage. Sensing a threat from behind, the panicked mage rushed to cast another spell, but Jin-Woo was faster, making a diagonal strike with his dagger.
The mage also turned to smoke. Thump!
Jin-Woo looked down at the empty robe on the ground, then returned his dagger to his inventory. Got hit by one of those attacks once before when I dropped my guard. Jin-Woo had actually been on high alert as soon as he had sensed mana coalescing in one area. It was something he'd learned when facing Yuan-Zhou's light magic.
Jin-Woo refused to fall victim to the same attack twice. That was why reviewing notes for a test felt like an apt comparison. And that's not all.
He found that he was using a specific stat to defeat each monster.
For knights, strength. For assassins, it was perception.
Agility for archers, and stamina against mages. If Jin-Woo's stats hadn't met the base requirements to face each foe, it would have been harder to deal with them. Without enough strength, he wouldn't have made a dent in the knight's armor. If perception was too low, he would have had a tough time figuring out where the assassins were.
I'm really glad I didn't just throw everything into strength.
His intelligence stat was still a little low, but as long as he kept an eye on his mana usage, he'd manage.
You have opened item, leather pouch. It contains 20,000 gold and a canteen of lukewarm water.
You have acquired 20,000 gold and a canteen of lukewarm water.
Jin-Woo immediately took the canteen out of inventory and gulped down the water. Phew, he could slowly feel exhaustion setting in. How much farther do I have to go? Was there even an end?
He put the empty canteen on the ground and placed his hands on his hips. He had been in the dungeon for 3 hours now, and he was both mentally and physically tired.
Should I get some rest?
Jin-Woo sat down against the cave wall.
Stats. Ping.
Fatigue, 66, his fatigue was nearing a dangerous level. If it went over 70, it would have a negative effect on both his body and mind. He needed to take a power nap and bring it down. Jin-Woo rested his head against the wall and quickly dozed off. He was so tired that even in this dangerous environment, he could fall fast asleep.
However, SHWK. A sound pierced the air.
Time slowed down, and Jin-Woo snatched an arrow flying toward him out of the air.
THWP.
He opened his eyes. In the distance, an archer was reloading its bow.
Does that mean I'm not allowed to sleep yet? Jin-Woo summoned Kasaka's Venom Fong as he hauled himself to his feet. KRNCH.
The knight, now with a severely dented chestplate, slowly slid to the ground.
The splayed suit of armor didn't move. Ping. You have defeated a knight. You have leveled up.
Although he'd lost the full recovery benefit for now, Jin-Woo continued leveling up as he battled the monsters. It was a small comfort despite his exhaustion. Jin-Woo looked at the scrape on his fist and clicked his tongue. He could heal if he rested for a time, but the damn monsters wouldn't cut him any slack.
At least he was swimming in loot now.
Items equipped: Warden's Collar, A. High-rank Knight's Chestplate, B. Mid-rank Assassin's Boots, B. Low-rank Archer's Gloves, C. High-rank Mage's Ring, B. Besides what he'd equipped, he stored anything else of use in his inventory.
A weapon of some kind would have been nice, though.
Assassins dropped daggers, but they had a similar attack level to Kasaka's Venom Fong and lacked the extra debuff.
What did this knight have to offer?
Jin-Woo reached his hand out to the light.
Ping.
Item: High-rank Knight's Gauntlets, Acquisition Difficulty, B category, Protective Gear Physical Damage Decrease, plus 3% additional effect, prevents injury to the wearer's hands. If strength is less than 80, movement speed will decrease.
Aha!
Jin-Woo beamed as he acquired the gauntlets and wasted no time equipping them. Like the other wearable items, the gauntlets weren't in any way cumbersome, and his fingers still had full range of motion.
Excellent.
Jin-Woo looked up from wiggling his fingers. All the way at the end of the path, he could finally see where the line of torches stopped, blocked off by giant castle gates.
It was rare for the boss's lair to have any kind of door. It brought to mind the underground temple dungeon from not too long ago.
Back then, they hadn't known what to expect, and too many people had paid dearly. But that was then, and this was now. He looked back in the direction from which he'd come.
It took almost 6 hours to get here.
He had reached level 45 and was equipped to the teeth.
All his preparations were complete.
As much as he wanted to rest and replenish his HP, monsters would only interrupt him if they knew he was trying to sleep. He couldn't afford to attract monsters and risk increasing his fatigue.
HP 4511/8 330, MP 660/790, fatigue 43. Let's finish this.
Jin-Woo checked his stats one last time and then gripped the door handles on each gate.
Kreo-ak. As if rigged to some mechanism, the massive doors swung open at his touch.